Please leave a comment where you are watching from and share your horror stories with us. Thank you. It was a warm summer night. We were 17 and we were in love. No, wait, scratch that. We were 17 and wanted to grind each other. That's the one. I was over at my friend's place chilling out. He was playing Diablo 2, and I was on the other computer chatting on MSN, when lo and behold, she logged on. After some small talk, I mentioned I was in town at Joe's, pseudonym, place, and she said I should come over to her house. We had talked beforehand about fooling around, made out a bit, and we both wanted to screw, but parents etc. kept getting in the way. I told Joe that I was going to go and try to get laid, and he was understandably supportive. And with that, I was off into the night. It was midnight or shortly after, cloudy but hot out, and the orange glow from the city lit up the night remarkably well. As I walked and pondered the possible events to come, I was accompanied by the distant yet booming sound of thunder. I really should have noticed the smell of rain in the air. I made quick work of the several blocks between us and came to her house, going to her bedroom window as was previously directed. Knock knock, she came to the window with a finger to her lips, wearing a black bra and pink underwear, and pointed down. My eyes followed her gesture to the still form of her young brother, lying on her bedroom floor. She preempted my curiosity with, "He gets afraid of thunderstorms, so he is going to sleep in here tonight." To which I asked with more of a look of disappointment and confusion than words, "But I wanted to plow you, all romantic-like." Her smile told me I was still in business. I crawled into her window, took off my shoes and left them on her bedroom floor, and we stepped out of her room and made our way to her basement. The lights were out, as we did not want to wake her religious parents, but she knew her way around, and led me past a table to her couch. After a few minutes of pathetic teenager make-out and pawing, things got serious, and I was awarded my first blow. It goes without saying that it was fantastic, as I have only had one before in my entire life. Horror story for another day, perhaps. And after a while I returned the favor to her. After this we moved to the rough stuff. Being the responsible young adult that I was, I had brought 2 condoms, and being the young adults that we were, she advised I wear them both for extra protection, and I did. Cue worst tip ever. But I'm fairly sure it did happen. In the throes of passion, we were totally unaware that the distant rumbling of thunder had become the storm of the year directly above our town, and the rain and thunder eventually tore our attention away. Wait a minute. That doesn't sound like rain. That sounds like footsteps. To this day, I have yet to see anyone do anything faster than that Christian girl get dressed. She was dressed and tugging at my arm before I had my pants fully done up. So I grabbed my shirt and my socks, and she dragged me up the stairs and across the common room. Well, mostly across. About halfway down, the telltale flicker of flashlights descends the stairs. Turns out the power had been knocked out by the storm. Not having enough time to get to her room without being seen, she shoved me into the bathroom beside us, and went to address her parents as I climbed into the shower stall and cowered. Outside I heard them conversing. Her parents, having no suspicions, were quite calm, just asking how her and her brother were doing. Fine. Okay, well then we are going to go back to bed, try and get some sleep. Phew, I'm in the clear. Her dad utters a phrase I won't soon forget. I am just going to use the bathroom before we go. And steps into my hiding place. Placing the flashlight on the bathroom counter, beam up, I see the silhouette of a large man walk over to within 3 feet of me and take a pee. I'm fairly sure my heart stopped beating, just to make sure he couldn't detect me at all. He finishes, wastes his one flush. Come on, people. When the power is out, follow the mantra. If it's brown, flush it down. If it's yellow, let it mellow. And departs. Parents leave, she comes and gets me, we both crap bricks, and then we continue into her room, so I can get the F out ASAP. I get fully dressed, and am sitting on the edge of her bed putting on my last sock when both of our eyes shoot to the bottom of her bedroom door. Flashlights. I quickly discern that I don't have the time to get out the window undetected, but spot that her bed has a fairly decent rise to it, and luckily for me, was uncluttered underneath. I drop to the floor and ninja vanish mere moments before her parents enter her room. Again, inconsequential chit-chat, and I feel like I am in the clear. I sigh a breath of relief, and let my head rest on her carpet, looking out into the room. Directly into the eyes of her 5-year-old brother lying on the floor, now wide awake and staring into my soul. I'm done. I'm busted. I'm dead. Christian father kills horny teenager is going to be the headline in the newspaper the next day, guaranteed. A million options flash through my mind until I decide on a brilliantly simple choice. Bringing one finger up to my lips, I make the sign for silence and secrecy. Thank FSM for the playful naivety of children, because he simply smiled and returned the gesture. Her parents departed, and shortly after, so did I, to enjoy my walk home in the pouring hot summer rain, with ample time to ponder how close I came to a serious shit-beating. My freshman, I believe, year of college, I met a girl on MySpace. She seemed nice, and the pictures looked rather flattering. Jokes all landed squarely, things were looking good. So we decide to meet. I'm driving through Dayton, going through rougher and rougher parts of town, until I finally come upon this ramshackle POS house in a neighborhood that could have doubled for war-torn Bosnia. I knock, and a she-mammoth answers the door, but the hair color and facial arrangement is all wrong, so while turned off, I'm not quite freaking yet, leading me into a dark, dank family room. The place looks like it hasn't seen new furniture since the 70s, and I can barely discern that I'm sitting on a sofa, it being so covered with dirty quilts and blankets. I'm trying to muster all of the courage together I can, because at this point I'm beginning to think I've walked straight into some sort of Silence of the Lambs bait and switch ordeal. The woman says such and such, I can't even remember her name, will be out in a minute, and leaves me there. I then notice a large mentally retarded man sitting on a chair near me, and I realize that SpongeBob is on the TV. So I begin to make very awkward conversation with a very retarded man about a very retarded TV show. He guffaws, I shuffle uncomfortably, waiting for my internet princess to arrive. And she does. And she's a wildebeest. An abomination straight from the heart of the worst B-movie slasher flicks. The angles treated her well, hiding every fold, every facial flaw, every facet of pure despair in her physical being. The amazing cleavage shots. Why yes, quite possible when each of your breasts are the size and shape of sagging, partially deflated soccer balls. Some additional awkward small talk passes, and we leave. Her in some kind of delirious half-crazed mania, me reminding myself that purposefully crashing my car into a tree at high speed is not only bad form, but rough on my insurance payments. The entire ride over she tells me how she's never seen a car as nice as mine. Now at this point, I still had my little Ford ZX2, and while it was a decent car for a college kid, it certainly wasn't anything even resembling an enviable vehicle. It was a college kid's little Econobox sports coupe, replete with missing fog light, scraped bumpers, and numerous burn holes. But to hear this girl talk, or rasp, it depended on how deep into her cigarette she was. We were cruising around town in the Shangri-La of automobiles. Screw your Mercedes, Daddy's driving an Escort. We got dinner at some little chain restaurant. The food was passable, the conversation droll, and terribly uninteresting. I contemplated drowning myself in my soup at least 3 times. However, the soup was the brightest part of the evening thus far, so I was wary to ruin it with my face. I pick up the check, partially because I like to think that not all chivalry is dead, but more so that it meant I owed her nothing. I take her back to her place, and she invites me in. I am young and stupid, and I accept. Her wildebeest friend, profoundly retarded brother, this information I had gleaned from our dinner conversation. Her and myself all sit around making small talk. Then she starts talking about butt sex, about how she lost a bet and had to do it, but she took it like a trooper. Took it like a trooper, in the pooper. The whole time she kept making very, very obvious stares in my direction, like I was supposed to take up a broom and lead the charge deep into the Hershey Highway, hell-bent on making the experience as memorable as possible. It was at that point, I believe, that my soul died. I make up some lame excuse, exam, drunk friend, sudden recession of the testicles, and leave. She follows me into the yard and puts her considerable arms around me, doing her best attempt at a doe-eyed stare. Nice to meet you. Sure, I'll call you. I have to go. We'll talk to you later. Bye. I was 1 second of eye contact from going gay. Be warned, this is going to be a bit of an epic as it spans several periods of time. I met this cute blonde girl, let's call her Sarah, while getting off the airplane upon arriving back at college at the end of summer vacation. I helped an old woman off the plane with her luggage, and Sarah thought it was cute, so she came over and started chatting me up. We make small talk and wait by the baggage claim together, then exchange numbers and mutually agree that we should hang out sometime. I forget about the whole thing and school/work starts back up. Then a few days later in the evening I get a phone call. It's Sarah. She's drunk. She manages to tell me that she thinks I'm really cute and she wants to see me, so we make plans for the following night. She's taking the train in. I lived in the city and she lived in the burbs, and I'm supposed to meet her at the station. As I arrive at the station, my cell phone dies. I start to panic, thinking I'll never find her amidst all the other people. If only I had been so lucky. So it starts off fine and we go have a beer, then decide to go to a hookah bar I know of. We get there and share a hookah, chat some more, order a drink, and then I switch to tea. She stays on the hard stuff, getting more and more sauced as the night goes on. I want to say something, but I don't feel I know her well enough to cut her off, and I had recently found out from her that she was in the Navy, and thus was a salty sailor, who could drink most guys twice her size under the table. All of a sudden, she says she feels sicker and wants to go back to my place. I ask her if maybe she needs to stop by the bathroom, but she insists she's fine, just feeling claustrophobic. So I get a cab for us and we're on our way. It's maybe a 4-minute cab ride from the hookah bar to my place, and she's resting her head on my shoulder in a snuggly type of way. About halfway there, with no warning at all, she pukes all over the back of the cab and me. I don't react at all, and my head is thinking, really? Really? Shy. The cab driver starts flipping his shit, and I tell him to calm down, and that I'll take care of it once we get to my place. So we get there and I bring her upstairs to my place, clean her up a bit, and lay her on the couch with a blanket over her, then grab some cleaning supplies and head back down to the cab. So me and this cabbie are scrubbing the back of his cab in silence for a while, and suddenly we start to crack up at how ridiculous the situation is. This was the high point of my night. I tip him $50 for the inconvenience, and he was cool about it, and head back upstairs. When I get up there, she has moved from the couch into my bed. I'm way too grossed out to do anything with her, having just cleaned up her vomit for the last half hour, so in disgust I fall asleep on the couch. The next day, she vaguely apologizes and says she doesn't remember much. I decide not to make a big deal out of it, and give her the benefit of the doubt, thinking it was probably just a bad combination or something. It's the weekend and she wants to see the city, so I take her out to a couple museums and we walk around a lot. Evening comes yet again, day 2, and not wanting her to overdo it again, suggest we head back to my place, have a glass of wine, and chill out. She happily agrees, and we get back safe and sound. We split a bottle of red and start making out on the couch. So far, so good. I should mention, being ex-military, this girl has a perfect body. She hints that she wants to move to the bed, so we do so, then get naked and start rolling around with each other. We trade a little foreplay, and I get up to grab a condom. I put it on, then get back in bed and prepare for the big move. And this is when it all goes to shit. I put the tip in, and she immediately breaks down in tears. Not tears of pain, but like emotional tears. What the fuck? I ask her what's wrong and she starts sobbing. He told me he loved me. He told me he loved me, and I will still always love him. So I spend the next 2 hours embracing her shuddering body with the condom still on my deflated penis, providing a Freudian therapy session to this girl who had puked all over me in a taxi the previous night. Eventually she calms down enough to fall asleep in my bed again, and I am too weirded out to deal with that, so I again sleep on the couch in my own apartment. The next day I walk her to the train station, glad to be free of her, and we hug and part ways. She says she's going to miss me, and I kind of awkwardly smile, not knowing how to respond. I never spoke to her again. She still tries to call me once a month, and leaves me crazy messages telling me how much she misses me. I was in high school. I was / will always be a pretty big nerd. I had fairly limited contact with girls, but I was starting to come into my own. I was starting to be more comfortable with myself, with talking to other people, with girls. I was seated behind one of those ultra-cute Southern California girls in my history class, and while I'm gung-ho for science, history wasn't really of much interest with me, so I kind of dicked around in class. I started noticing that the attractive girl in front of me, Leslie, was starting to notice my little comments, and she actually joked back with me on occasion. Over a few months, she and I started to actually be friends, which was weird, since I was totally not her type, me being a skinny, awkward nerd, and her being a beautiful, long-haired, popular kid. One afternoon she passes me a note, and when I read it, I realized she has asked me to the Sadie Hawkins dance. Flummoxed, I said yes. At my school, this was a kind of less formal dance, where you and your partner were supposed to dress up as a themed pair. We went to the local costume shop, and after trying out a lot of different outfits, we realized that based on our height difference, I hadn't gone through my high school growth spurt, so I was a good deal shorter than her. It would be hilarious to go as Sonny and Cher. We had absolutely spot-on costumes. Like perfect. Somewhere I have a picture of us, and it is simultaneously the most embarrassing picture of myself, and the awesomest. The day of the dance rolls on, and she picks me up again. I was a nerd, a year younger than everyone in my grade, including her, and this was before I had a license, in her totally sexy low red Mustang. She's dressed as Cher. I'm wearing the silly wig and furry vest of Sunny. We drive to the high school, and as we approach the auditorium where the dance is being held, everyone is completely impressed. We had gone all out. We looked great. We get to the door, and we are asked for our identification. I pull mine out, and she can't find hers. We can't get into the dance without our IDs. We panic. We search her car. We drive back to her place, and I search her room. Again, we are dressed as Sunny and Cher during this frantic search. We drive back to the high school, the dance in full swing, but we are not allowed into the dance without IDs. Cue the depressing music as Sunny and Cher slump back to the red Mustang, parked in the high school parking lot. We stand there, under the stars, a little glum. "Oh well," she says. She looks at me and smiles. "Yeah, that sucks. Our costumes are still pretty groovy, huh?" I reply again, with about the dorkiest response I can give. She leans in close to me. "Hey, what would you do if I just jumped on you, and we made out right here in the parking lot?" She was totally wanting my little Sunny body. I gulped. "Oh gosh, I'd probably just pee my pants. That'd be crazy." We got in the car. She drove me home. She never looked at me the same way again. On top of that, here is another I have heard. Went dancing with a girl from work. First date with anyone, 25 years old, zero social skills, naturally. Wisely, I let her do all the talking, and we have a decent enough time. She doesn't even seem to notice my awkwardness, and I start to loosen up and even show a bit of confidence. "Hey, this is sort of fun," I say to myself. I explain that I can't dance, but she goads me into giving it a try, just one slow song. She'll walk me through it, she says, no big deal. No one's watching. My blood pressure shoots through the roof, but I'm still on a high, and hardly noticing my hands trembling and my pulse approaching a dangerous rate. We go over to the floor, and she puts my hand on her waist and takes my other hand in hers. Instantly, my breath leaves me, and the room fills with pea soup fog. The arteries in my forearms and throat contract painfully, and a crushing sensation overtakes me, fade to black. My memory cuts out at that point, but I'm told that I managed to crawl to the corner of the room after hitting the floor. When I came to, I was completely numb and paralyzed from head to toe, gasping for breath but getting almost none at all. The crushing feeling intensified, and I lost consciousness several more times in the next hour or so as I lay in the corner. Eventually I regained enough feeling in my legs to pull myself upright, stagger to a stool, and order an orange juice. My scalp and tongue were still numb, but I managed to drink it down and gather my thoughts enough to remember where I was, what day it was, and how I had gotten there. In another hour I was aware enough to risk driving home, which I did as slowly and deliberately as I could with my still dull reflexes and persisting numbness. I made it back to my room and slept until past noon the next day, still a bit numb and groggy even then. My date, I found out later, had been profoundly embarrassed by my actions and left immediately after I fell. She forgave me and never mentioned it to anyone, as far as I know. My high school had a foreign exchange program where students from Europe would come over and spend several months taking classes in our school. During a stormy and hot summer, a very lithe blonde girl with a thick French accent showed up during the semester. I was afraid to get to talk to her, being awkward and shy, but that changed one night I was invited to a drinking party at a friend's house. This was somewhat rare for me, so of course I accepted. The night started out well, with a barbecue and beer, with people hanging out all over the house. His parents were loaded, and the basement even had a billiards room. After finishing a particularly good burger smothered in barbecue sauce, I was enjoying my post-manges reverie, and went to the living room when I heard music nearby. There in the middle of the floor was the French girl with an acoustic guitar, playing and singing. Around her sat a group of eager guys, along with a few disinterested girls. I stood in the corner and drank my beer, doing my best wallflower impersonation. She explained to them, she didn't look at me, that she was born German but her parents traveled between France and Germany often, so she had a hybrid accent and spoke both languages. Her velvety voice was amazing for singing, and her thick accent was tantalizing. As the evening wore on, I drank a few more beers, wandered the house, and ended up in the hot tub with a few guys and girls. We talked and laughed as the sun plunged below the fence, and the air cooled. The rolling boil of the hot tub soothed my nerves and my muscles as I leaned back and just took the night air in. As others began to pack up and get dressed, she showed up in her bikini swimsuit and shot me a pursed smile and asked if she could get in water, with a gleam in her eyes. I nodded and tried to act cool, despite my heart racing like a horse thundering around the track. We made small talk, and I tried hard to understand her, just pleased to chat. Her eyes were slate blue, and her hair a natural blonde, strands thin and white like thick spider silk. Darkness fell while we caroused in the twilight, and then rain poured from the sky. We decided to stay in the water to keep warm. She then asked if I wanted to climb an arbor, which I stupidly realized meant tree. There was an ancient and huge tree at the far end of the yard that looked at us with knotted eyes. How could I say no? We ran barefoot, holding hands, out to the tree while the night opened its bowels on our heads. The wet grass clung to my feet as I stepped up onto the first nook of the tree and helped her up. Then the light at the back of the house with the hot tub went off. Maybe they didn't see us out at the back of the yard. No matter, I pulled her farther up the huge tree until I sat, with my legs draped out over two close branches, and she pulled herself up and straddled me for support and to keep from falling. She leaned in close, her chest pressing against me, and breathed in my ear like a tired angel. To keep this from being NSFW, she adjusted things without removing them, and the lighting rumbled, while fear of slipping gripped me. It was crazy. Anyway, she flipped back her head at just the wrong moment, and my hands slipped from her sides like missing a greased pig. She disappeared into the blackness with a gasp, and I heard nothing over the rain and thunder. I freaked out, adjusted my suit, and climbed down into the darkness in sheer panic, scraping my arms and legs on rasping bark. 1,000 scenarios ran through my mind. What if her back was broken? What if she died? I climbed down to find her on her back in the muddy grass at the base of the tree, sucking in air like an asthmatic. I leaned her up in horror, fearful that she was dying, when she calmed down, coughed hard a few times, and then burst out laughing, and gave me a crushing hug while whispering in my ear, "Don't you ever King let go of me again." I drove her home that night, and saw her only once more before her trip back to Europe. I spent the next 6 months convincing my parents I needed to do an exchange program, unsuccessfully. And another story to add. I was a freshman in college. I commuted to school and hung out at this coffee shop, and being a regular, I got to know pretty much everyone there, except for one, this blonde girl. Having the social skills of a blueberry pancake, it was up to my friend to start the conversation. Over the next few months I got to know her, not really, enough to get up the nerve to ask her out. I planned for a long time, but it never really came to fruition since she had boyfriend. I got to hear all about him for months. It was great. Anyway, she finally broke up with him because he woke up naked with a dude. I missed the rest of the details since I got all giddy at that point about the mere possibility of having a chance. Did I mention that I was pretty much infatuated with her at this point? Yeah, it was probably creepy. I took a few weeks to finally build up the courage to ask her out. I pumped myself up for days. It was some serious Stuart Smalley shit. So, I started talking to her at the coffee shop as usual. She started to go on about how she had a weird story to tell me, so I let her go first. She proceeds to tell me that the previous night, some guy from her work who was in training at the seminary and her were flirting, and he ended up at her house. They banged. This is the point where I should have just bit my tongue, but at this point, I spent so much time building myself up for the task that I just blurted out, "Hey, are you free this Friday? Want to see a movie or something?" And immediately thinking, WTF is wrong with me? She just told me that she banged a priest in training. Imagine my shock when she said yes. I immediately forgot all about the priest banging and spent the rest of the day in a bliss. I don't think I've ever been happier in my life, and I've had it pretty good, to be honest. So I pick her up on Friday, and we go to a movie theater. I had my heart set on some move or other, but she suggests the movie Bounce. In case you don't know what Bounce is, it's a chick flick with Ben Affleck and Gwyneth Paltrow, and it's terrible. Those two have the on-screen chemistry of industrial appliances. We watch the shitty movie and go to the coffee shop afterwards, where she proceeds to tell me how she used to kill cats at the farm. Not sure what she was trying to get at, but I could see that this was going nowhere and was getting weird. I dropped her off at her house, and we had one of those awkward hugs. Here's where it gets really dumb. While the date was terrible, I ended up chasing this girl for 2 more years. I got her. We had a 3-week relationship, which mostly consisted of banging. I freaked out after she wanted some space, and we broke up. I was done with college, and didn't really see her again. 5 years from there. I'm done with grad school, have a little more confidence, and learn to talk to girls, kinda. She gets a hold of me on Facebook. We hook up and start dating, completely choosing to ignore the past. She's not as pretty, but I still had a bit of a thing for her. I'm also noticing that she's a bit of a Bible thumper and a Republican. We agree on nothing, but I still kinda like her. We date for 9 months, and she thinks that she's preggo. Hearing those words, I don't think I've ever realized that I don't like a person so fast. A few days later, turns out she isn't pregnant. Dumps me. The next weekend, she tells me she got drunk at a wedding and banged some dude. Haven't talked to her since. His guy and I had been really close friends throughout almost my entire sophomore year of high school, and we both liked each other a lot, and through a combination of drunken peer pressure and taking care of our sick friend the same night, which was the first night any of us had gotten our hands on alcohol. Woo, irresponsible parents. We began dating. That is a whole other story entirely, though it was also one of the best and worst things that ever happened to me. Dating essentially meant that we would walk out of the school after lunch was over, skip the last class of the day, and walk to his house to play Wii and fool around before his parents got home. I'm not sure if he was a virgin or not. He told me he wasn't, but I found out later that he was somewhat of a pathological liar, and I've been told many different things since then. So to this day I don't know. But I was a virgin, and despite all the fooling around we did on his bed, trying to be quiet so his sister wouldn't hear us, I told him I would not have unprotected sex with him. A few days later, he approached me and told me his friend gave him about 15 condoms. And being young, stupid, and very, very attracted to this guy, I let him talk me into having sex with him when we got to his house that afternoon. It took a lot of persuasion, and even after I agreed, I was still scared. Almost all my firsts, except my first kiss, but I don't really count my first kiss because I accidentally bit the guy beforehand, had been with this guy, and we were moving really fast. Part of me knew it, but part of me liked him so much that if he had told me to jump off the canal bridge, I probably would have done it. But anyways, the fooling around commenced yet again, only this time we took it further. He had taken his boxers off, and was taking the condom from its little package when disaster number 1 struck. He couldn't manage to get it on himself. It's funny to think about it now, but at that point I was just really confused. They'd taught us how to put condoms on in health class with use of this nifty demonstration, including a Trojan and a banana, but he could not put it on. He refused my help, and even managed to snap it on his penis before getting it all the way on. Fortunately and surprisingly, this didn't kill his erection, but unfortunately, it put him in a bad mood. Any chance of being aroused I had was immediately shot at this point, so when he was ready, I was utterly terrified and extremely nervous. But finally, he moved on top of me, assured me that it was all okay, and that he was ready now. And then, disaster number 2. It didn't go in. He thrust and thrust, but it would not go in. Well, I shouldn't say that because it did hurt like a bitch for a few seconds, but he could not push it in any further than that. I'm not sure if it was because I was nervous, someone told me that, or what, but it wouldn't go in. At his command, we tried different positions, but it didn't work. In the end, he got pissed off and told me that I couldn't stay for dinner that night. Normally I would stay for dinner, his parents thinking I'd come over after school, and we were innocently playing video games or watching television the whole time, because it was his dad's birthday, which I found out from his sister was the truth. So I had to walk home. Normally he would walk me halfway home, his reasonings being that he worried about me, but said he wasn't going to this time. After that day, he pretty much stopped talking to me. We'd talk in school occasionally, but he never made an effort to continue dating or even stay friends after that, and I decided to give up after school ended that year, figuring it was hopeless. The worst part is, that day, I was wearing this blue pleated skirt that he begged me to keep on when we were fooling around and attempting sex, because I reminded him of a schoolgirl, and it was a huge fetish of his, apparently. Another story. Not a date as such, but anyway. When I was younger, I was a pretty serious paragliding bum. I used to work the winters as a cycle courier in London, then take the summers off, renting a one-room bedsit in Brighton, and flying on the South Downs. Here in the UK, you can thermal to 4,000 foot on a good day, or even 6,000 on a really good one. It's flatland flying, which is good but different to mountain flying, and this one year I got hooked up with this guy running trips to the Alps. It was my first visit to the mountains, and the deal was I'd work as an assistant instructor and get plenty of flying on this month-long trip. So late at night we arrived in Paisy-Valandry, a village which is part of Les Arcs ski resort and overlooking Bourg Saint-Maurice, and we slept until like 11 a.m. or lunchtime. The guy who organized this trip, which was a complete piss-up in a brewery, organizationally speaking, had arranged for us to stay in this kind of youth hostel. It accommodated school ski trips in the winter, but the place was quiet in the summer, which is when we were there. The hostel was like half or quarter full, I guess, and it ran trips doing things like whitewater rafting and climbing at that time of year. So the first day, we do chores like unpacking the trailer and sticking the paragliding tours logo on the side of the minibus and getting ready to accommodate the guests. And late afternoon, like 4 p.m. or so, we had to take off and get the chance at our first flight. It wasn't epic or anything like that, but the air was smooth and reliable, and you could just cruise around as long as you liked, plenty high and surrounded by the majesty of the mountains and all that. This was followed by a great meal, at which we had the first opportunity to properly meet some of the staff at the hostel. I was maybe 23 or 24. All the staff there were all about my age, and 2 or 4 weeks earlier I had split up with my long-term girlfriend, so I was pretty much ready for something interesting. There I am, after dinner, sitting on the deck with these 2 girls. It had been a pretty good day, and this month was looking great. These 2 girls were about 19, and were working as chalet girls/chambermaids at the hostel for the summer, and one of them had snuck some extra red wine out from the kitchen, and we were just sitting out back smoking and chilling. One of the girls, Emma, was petite and blonde, and she was going on about how we should all grab some sleeping bags and head over to this abandoned chapel where they camped out sometimes. I think there was another guy there. I don't remember anything about him, but the Emma's friend wasn't into this idea and kept coming up with reasons not to, whereas I was obviously like, yeah, cool, that sounds fun. Only really afterwards could I properly appreciate the friend's cock-blocking, but it worked out fine at the time, as we compromised with just me and Emma going for a walk alone up to the next village. So we head off, and on the way back stop off at this little meadow. I wasn't very experienced at the time, but I managed on this rare occasion to play all my cards perfectly. As we're stumbling across the uneven terrain of this meadow in the dark, I put out my hand for her, and she takes it, and so we end up sitting underneath this tree holding hands, and then kissing, and then I'm sliding my hand under her jumper marveling at how smooth her skin was. I guess we sat under that tree for about 45 minutes, kissing and cuddling, and we smoked a couple of cigarettes, I guess. It was perfect. I was in heaven. I'd been this awkward kid at school, and my first girlfriend had been a massive achievement for me. And here I was just a couple of weeks after breaking up with her, and I was going to be spending a month of summer in the mountains, enjoying my sport, and here was this perfect girl. I find petite and blonde a particularly attractive combination, who was into me. How perfect is that? So we walked back to the hostel in the moonlight, holding hands, and had a very quick kiss goodnight outside, because obviously we didn't want any of the other staff seeing us, and she goes inside whilst I stood out the front enjoying a final cigarette. As I smoked this, a guy came out asking after her, kinda acting protective about her safety, and so I told him she'd gone inside. The next morning at breakfast, the gossip from all the paragliding team was how I'd stolen off with this dude's girlfriend. I would really like to say how I did manage to steal this girl from her boyfriend, but it was not to be, and in retrospect I can say that that was probably a good thing. Got a single drink with a guy, declined a second. The date was perhaps an hour long. I'm not interested in more. As we exit the bar, it turns out we're walking in the same direction, alas. Out of nowhere, he puts his arm around me. I have no idea how to react, resolve the problem by drifting to the right until his arm can no longer physically be around me. Eventually I'm in arm's reach, so he does it again. There's a block to go till my place. I'm not sure what would be more awkward, removing his arm and walking together for a block, or enduring the arm. I endure the arm. We reach my street. I turn to go. He tries to kiss me. Aggressively. I duck to avoid his lips, say no. We're hugging. We're hugging. Then I flee. He calls out, so what do you think? I, baffled as to how this is happening, call back, I think I'm going home. I get a text message minutes later, saying it was nice to meet me, winky face. I respond with a polite message informing him I'm not interested. He sends a slew of additional texts, telling me if I'm feeling as passionate as he is, we should meet back at the bar tonight. I text back that I'm not interested again, this time more firmly. Commence about 8 months of texting and emailing by him informing me that I'm ugly, need to lose 30 pounds, nobody will ever love me, I'm a graceless gargoyle, my personal favorite, on and on. It's all very amusing, actually, once it's clear he's not going to escalate it to physical stalking. The only response I ever offer is a single "stop contacting me," or I'll involve the police, early on. Eventually he slows down a bit, and I assume he's latched on to some other girl. Then a few months ago he starts sending me love notes. Tells me he wants to eat strawberries off my thigh and take me to his love Casbah. He wants to be Facebook friends, finds me on Flickr, tells me he's got a photographic memory for my bikini pictures. The last time he heard anything back from me was July 6th, 2010. This month he's offering to buy me lingerie. Sigh. It was funnier when he hated me. Those were good times. And final story. 6 or 7 years ago, I was a regular IRC chatter. I started talking to a girl there, let's call her Jenny, and we hit it off. She had a wry, somewhat cynical sense of humor. I realized that she was maybe 10 years younger than me, but since, according to her, she was over 18, meeting up shouldn't be a problem. She lived in Florida, I live in Denmark. So one evening, we talk about her visiting over the summer. I go to cook dinner, and when I finish eating, sign back on IRC. She tells me that she's bought a ticket, and will stay for 3 months. I tell her, whoa, that's a really long time. I was thinking a couple of weeks or so. But since she has already paid for the ticket, I feel forced to let her stay. Fortunately, many of the other people in the IRC channel, where we hang out, are also Danes, and want her to visit them. During the time we have known each other, she has sent photos of herself, and I'm quite surprised when she looks nothing like her photos. When I meet her at the airport, I expect to see a chubby young woman, but I was not expecting her to be 150 centimeters tall and just as wide, at least. I'm 180 centimeters and weigh about 90 kilograms. I'm fairly sure she weighs more than I do. Now, I'm not a shallow person, so I think to myself, well, at least she has a great personality, right? Wrong. Over the next 2 days, I find out that not only is she immature and sheltered, but apparently her whole world is made up of deceit, lies, and huge amounts of drama. She has lied about so many things, including, and I don't find out about this until the day before she leaves, her age. But more on this later. She has apparently also told her parents that she is visiting her friend Kathy in Denmark, who is married to a brain surgeon. I don't know anyone named Kathy. I am not a brain surgeon, but a photographer. If things don't go exactly according to her plan, she will immediately start wailing and sobbing, stamping her feet, and punch the walls. So when I confront her and ask her why she has been lying to her parents, she throws the mother of all hissy fits. Eventually, after 2 hours of coaxing, I manage to talk her down. On the 3rd day, my nerves are frayed from her drama and lies. I can't make any sense of her cockamamie web of deceit. My apartment is so messy that I don't recognize it. She insists she will do the cooking, and to her credit, she did not do a bad job of the actual food preparation. But unfailingly, every single time she has cooked a meal, every single pot, pan, and utensil will be dirty, and I will spend 40 minutes to an hour doing the dishes. She eats around the clock. Every day, I completely restock the fridge. On the 5th day, I tag in one of my friends and his wife, who is American, we can call them Hank and Gabby, and arrange with them to let Jenny stay with them for a few days, and then send her off to meet up with her other internet friends in the area. I am exhausted, and honestly, very tired of taking care of this petulant little compulsive liar, who completely wrecks my apartment every single day. My friend, let's call him Matthew, flies in from Sweden while Jenny is away, and we spend 2 days completely cleaning up all the mess Jenny has made. We discover that she has gouged deep furrows into my brand new and expensive dining table by using it as a cutting block. She has also broken the shower head. I have no idea how. Matthew stays for 4 days, we watch movies and go for photography walks around the city. The day after he goes back home, Jenny returns. In less than an hour, she completely wrecks my apartment. At this point, I've had enough, and I tell her that she has to change the date of her return flight because I've gotten a photography assignment abroad. Cue wall-pounding hysterical rage for an epic 6 hours. At my wit's end, I call Hank and Gabby to ask them for advice. Gabby picks up, and as soon as she hears the wailing in the background, she tells me they'll be right over. When Jenny finds out, she stops crying and runs to the bathroom. The shower starts running. Hank and Gabby come over, and Gabby, who also has had enough, has some choice words for Jenny, who does not reply. They help me put all of Jenny's things in, on, or near her suitcase, and as we're doing this we find a passport, which clearly states that she is, in fact, 16 years old. Not my proudest moment. We finish packing, and then they go home. As soon as the door shuts, Jenny unlocks the bathroom door. Apparently, she has been sitting in the shower on the drain, thus flooding the entire bathroom with a good inch or so of water. I hand her the phone and tell her to either call the airline to book a new return flight, or call the nearest hotel to make arrangements with them for the rest of her stay in Denmark. She turns on the waterworks again, but when she sees the look on my face, she immediately stops and does as told. The next morning, she leaves, bawling her head off. I have had enough at this point, and can't be bothered to even walk her to the station, which is 4 minutes away by foot. The day after, she calls and tells me she got home all right, and thank you for a wonderful time, and can she please come visit again soon. I tell her that we will have to discuss this later, as I'm about to leave my apartment for a photo job downtown, which is true. While I'm out, she calls my home phone 197 times, my cell phone, which is on silent, 337 times, and there are also 53 emails when I open my Outlook. These numbers are factual, not exaggerations. This is the final straw. Next time she calls, I lose it and yell at her incoherently, tell her to never contact me again, and hang up. I block her from all avenues that I can think of where she might be able to contact me, and that, fortunately, is that.